The Honorable, the Speaker.
Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the Creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this House here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established amongst us for all generations. Amen. Amen. Namaste.
Oath or affirmation. Announcements by the Speaker.
Honorable members, Mr. Prakash Ramada, MP, member for St. Augustine, has requested leave of absence from today's sitting of the House. The leave which the member seeks is granted.
Bills brought from the Senate. Petitions. Papers.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have the honor to lay on the table the following papers. The report of the Auditor General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago on the consolidated financial statements of the Trinidad and Tobago Unit Trust Corporation for the year ended December 31st, 2015. 2. The annual report and annual audited statements of accounts of the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago for the year ended September 30th, 2015. 3. The report of the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago with respect to the progress of the proposals to restructure PICO, BAT, and CIB for the quarter ended March 31st, 2016. 4. The annual consolidated audited financial statements of the Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago Limited for the year ended September 30th, 2015. I beg to move that papers 1 to 3 be referred to the Public Accounts Committee and paper 4 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee.
Honorable members, the question is that papers 1 to 3 be referred to the Public Accounts Committee and paper 4 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? The ayes have it. The Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay on the table the following paper. The Annual Administrative Report of the Tobago House of Assembly for the year 2015.
Minister of National Security.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay on the table the following papers. The Defense Rates of Pay and Allowances Amendment Regulations 2016 and the Defense Rates of Pay and Allowances Amendment Number 2 Regulations 2016.
Reports from committees. Prime Minister's questions. Urgent questions.
Member for Point Tapir.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Finance, given the recent submission of the eagerly anticipated report of the Commission of Inquiry into the collapse of CLICO, could the Minister indicate when will the report be laid in Parliament?
Finance.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The report of the Commission of Inquiry into the collapse of CLICO will be dealt with in a responsible manner by a responsible government at the appropriate time.
Member for Chaguanas West.
Madam Speaker, will that, in a responsible time, can you give us a date where you can provide that report to the responsible institution called the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago?
Minister of Finance.
May I repeat, Madam Speaker, I said it will be dealt with responsibly by a responsible government at the appropriate time.
Member for Chaguanas West.
Madam Speaker, could the Minister undertake to give us a definition of what he considers appropriate for the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago?
Certainly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in any commission of inquiry, there are a number of issues that must be considered. This government, being a responsible government, will fully consider all relevant factors with respect to this report, and it will be dealt with appropriately at the appropriate time in a responsible manner by a responsible government. In other words, it will not be dealt with irresponsibly.
Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Honourable Minister of Energy and Energy Industries. Can the Minister state whether the government has recently taken a decision to restart the Alutech aluminum downstream project?
Minister of Energy and Energy Industries.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. At the meeting of the Standing Committee on Energy held on May 25, 2016, the committee agreed that the government will appoint its designated 3 members to the Board of Directors of Alutech, and that said board be asked to provide a review of the proposed project. Thank you.
Member for Chaguanas West.
So that no decision has been made to restart the project. What is taking place is a review.
That is correct.
Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Works and Transport. Following recent flooding in Port of Spain as a result of heavy rains, can the Minister provide details of the status of the IDB-assisted flood alleviation and drainage program for the city of Port of Spain?
Minister of Works and Transport. Leader of the House.
Yeah. Madam Speaker, with respect to that urgent question, I would like to indicate that that IDB program is still being attended to, and that within the next week, the program will get the necessary program manager, which was not appointed during the last administration. This program, Madam Speaker, has been languishing for quite some time because of the fact that several matters had not been put in place during the currency of the program. And as a consequence of that, since this responsible administration has come into office, we have been dealing assiduously with ensuring that everything is put in place in order to ensure that the funding is accessed from the IDB.
Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I know the Minister of Planning sought to answer the question, but now that the Minister of Works and Transport is here, supplemental question to either one of the ministers. Could the Minister state at what stage of the design for this flood alleviation program that the design status at the current of this flood alleviation program, where it is at?
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity. Madam Speaker, a design has been completed. Then there was a suggestion by the experts that some improvement can have been effected, and that improvement has been affected as well. So there is a design, and the program is ready as we re-engage the bank to carry on with a program, as I'm sure has been said by my colleague on this side, with a program that was left idle for near 5 years.
Member for Chaguanas West.
Well, I know the minister is extemporaneous, but could the Honourable Minister indicate what measures, now that he's in charge, what measures are being put in place to remedy the current flooding whilst you await the design input by the various expertise?
I'm very, very happy that my friend raised this question. It gives me an opportunity, Madam Speaker, to indicate that under the Ministry of Works and Transport, with the responsibility for the major rivers and drains, we have embarked for the last few months on a very significant desilting program of all the major drains and rivers on the foothills, waterways on the foothills of the northern and indeed the central range in anticipation of the rainy season. We have engaged the regional corporations in a collaborative effort, and they have been working along with us, collaborating, sharing equipment, sharing information, and they have been dealing with the ones that they are responsible for. Madam Speaker, we feel very confident with this high-level activity. We are well prepared for ordinary or average anticipated rainfall as we do what is required of us under this program.
Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You must look at the relevance of your answer. Madam Speaker, to the Minister of Public Utilities, can the Minister state the reasons for the decision to stop delivery of mail to the communities of Beetham, Mover, and Laventille?
Minister of Public Utilities.
Madam Speaker, the Trinidad and Tobago Postal Corporation did not issue a directive to stop delivering mail in Beetham, Mover, and Laventille. The postal service, delivery service, continued uninterrupted in those areas. However, towards the end of May, delivery workers were attacked while delivering mail in Laventille, Barataria, and the Beetham. As a result of these attacks, TD Post deployed additional security to accompany the postal delivery officers in these areas. Mail, therefore, continues to be delivered to the residents of Beetham, Mover, and Laventille uninterrupted.
Member for Chaguanas.
No, it was in the newspaper. You're against the media. To the Honourable Madam Speaker. Prime Minister, cool yourself.
Members, please.
To the Attorney General, what measures are being put in place to remedy the lack of accommodation for members of the public at the recently opened Chaguanas Magistrate Court?
The Attorney General.
Speaker. Madam Speaker, this matter has some history behind it, which quickly includes the Chaguanas Magistrates Court was intended to be absorbed into a judicial complex promised by the last government. There was a procurement scandal in relation to judicial complexes, as a result of which they were not built. The Magistrates Court then had to receive attention by the last cabinet, which undertook to retrofit or repurpose the Chaguanas Library. That bill was estimated at close to $80 million and was abandoned by the last government. In those circumstances, the judiciary was compelled to use the court in the very limited premises as they stood by retrofitting them. This is a matter which is receiving attention of the judiciary and the government at present because of the entire scandal which surrounded the procurement of judicial complexes and the inadequacy by the last government in relation to meeting the judiciary's concerns.
Member for Chaguanas West.
So, whilst I acknowledge your history, what is being done at this time while members of the public are facing the elements like rain, thunder, and lightning during this rainy season?
Attorney General.
The first position is that the court had to be reopened to avoid the scandalous situation of Tunapuna having to absorb that entire magisterial district. Secondly, albeit limited accommodation is being utilized in the best purpose possible. Thirdly, the Ministry of Finance, the Office of the Attorney General, and the Judiciary will be discussing this. As you know, the Judiciary is in discussions with us as to how to operationalize the autonomy for their own budgetary allocation and management, and we expect to be able, in coordination with the Judiciary, to speak to this in a more fulsome fashion after the analysis has been completed and financing located.
Member for Chaguanas West.
Madam Speaker, supplemental question to the Honorable Attorney General. Could you give us a time undertaking as to when this complete analysis will be done, and that therefore some kind of temporary accommodation provided for the people as they go to seek justice?
The Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Honourable Member will recall that it took the last government over 5.5 years to get us to just do a retrofit of the existing court. In those circumstances, we intend to do it a whole lot faster than the last government did, and we are urging the Judiciary to sit with us. The Honourable Chief Justice, upon his return to the jurisdiction, has already carded meetings to be had, and we expect, after consultation with the Judiciary, to put a specific time frame before the population. To do so prematurely would be dangerous and would be inviting further criticism to this entire scandal.
For point of order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the Minister of Finance. In light of Sir Anthony Coulsman's statement that the powers of regulatory control of the insurance industry by the central bank are found to be fundamentally deficient, could the Minister advise what immediate measures are being pursued to remedy or rectify this untenable situation?
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in recognition of the issues surrounding the regulatory control. Madam Speaker, I can.
Members, I would just like to remind you all, Member for Couva South. Members, I would just like to remind you all, with respect to the standing orders, when members are not speaking, the standing orders are going to be strictly enforced today. Please continue, Minister of Finance.
Thank you,
Minister
Madam
of
Speaker. Madam Speaker, the issues with respect to regulatory control of insurance companies were well known before the 2010 general election, and a draft bill had been prepared. The last administration took 5 years and 3 months, if you'll permit me, fooling around with that legislation, sent it through joint select committees, and allowed it to lapse when the Parliament was dissolved in June of 2015. This responsible government has no intention of behaving in that irresponsible manner. And notwithstanding the fact that there may be 1 or 2 weaknesses in the insurance bill laid in this Parliament and allowed to lapse by the previous government, it is this government's intention to relay that exact same insurance bill, as is where is, without changing a semicolon, so at least we can put some structure and some order and strengthen the insurance industry in the immediate short term. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for point of order.
Through you, Madam Speaker, could the Minister of Finance state when that will be coming to Parliament?
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Next Friday.
Questions or notice? Questions for oral answer.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, of the 22 questions that are for oral answer, we are asking for a deferral of question number 131, question number 145, and question number 152. 131, 145, and 152.
145 and 150.
And Madam Speaker, I wish to advise this House that all written answers are ready for distribution.
45. Member for Chaguanas East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question 124 to the Honourable Minister of Education.
Minister.
Madam Speaker, the ECCE Centre referred to in the Honourable Member's question and located at Dastrace Enterprise is the Egypt Oasis Government ECCE Centre. Dastrace is actually located in a housing development corporation development known as Lionsgate. Construction of the centre commenced in April 2014 with a projected date of handover to the Ministry of Education as August 7, 2015. The building is 100% completed and 85% of the required furniture and equipment is in place. Temporary water and electricity connections to the ECCE Centre are currently being serviced by the HDC development. However, the Ministry of Education has not officially taken over the centre from the Education Facilities Company Limited and operationalized it because statutory approvals from the Water and Sewage Authority and the Government Electrical Inspectorate have not yet been obtained. Further, the Chaguanas Borough Corporation requires proof of ownership of the land before a certificate of completion is issued for the Egypt Oasis Government ECCE Centre. The Ministry of Education is currently pursuing this matter to investigate the land with the Housing Development Corporation. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Education, as a responsible government agency, is committed to the physical well-being and safety of the learners and the teaching staff who will occupy the centre, and we have therefore exercised our duty of care and insist that the facility is fully compliant with all statutory requirements governing the completion of public buildings. Thank you.
Member for Chaguanas East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Given all that the Honourable Minister has stated, is it expected, given the requirements that you have laid out, that the centre will be operational for the new academic year?
Minister of Education.
We are hoping that everything is done so that the centre could be in operation at the beginning of the new academic year.
Member for Princess Town.
Madam Speaker, through you to the Honourable Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts, question number 125.
Development, Culture and the Arts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With respect to question 125A to C, 23 applications were received and funding was approved for 22 organizations. A breakdown of the amounts requested and the amounts approved and disbursed by the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts for Spiritual Baptist Liberation Day 2016 celebrations is as follows. Council of Elders, Spiritual Shouter Baptist Faith of Trinidad and Tobago, budget $1,001,400, funds disbursed $40,000. Friends of Faizabad, budget $5,000, funds disbursed $5,000. Holy Faith Baptist Tabernacle, budget $392,200, funds disbursed by the ministry $40,000. Holy Nazarene Spiritual Baptist Church, budget $112,000, funds disbursed by the ministry $15,000. Judah Healing Temple, budget $16,775, funds disbursed $4,000. Mount Sinai Spiritual Baptist Church, budget $116,800, funds disbursed by the ministry $15,000. National Evangelical Spiritual Baptist Faith Archdiocese, budget $216,000, funds disbursed by the ministry $30,000. New Horizons Fraternity, budget $39,100. Funds disbursed by the ministry, $7,000. Shouter Baptist Learning Institute, budget $35,200. Funds disbursed by the ministry, $5,000. Spiritual Shouter Baptist Incorporation, Mayaro, Rio Claro, budget $180,000. Funds disbursed by the ministry, $20,000. St. Anne's Church of Spiritual Metaphysics, Incorporated, budget $49,800. Funds disbursed by the ministry, $20,000. St. Teresa Spiritual Baptist Healing School, budget $10,000. Funds disbursed, none. The Foundation for the Academic Advancement of Spiritual Baptist Youth, budget $30,000. Funds disbursed by the ministry, $15,000. The National Congress of Incorporated Baptist Organization of Trinidad and Tobago, budget $397,060. Funds disbursed, $350,000. The New Jerusalem Church of Jesus Christ, budget $100,000. Funds disbursed, $40,000. The Spiritual Baptist Faith Incorporated, budget $100,000. Funds disbursed, $15,000. The Spiritual Baptist Shouter Point Fortin Liberation Committee, budget $108,800. Funds disbursed by the ministry, $15,000. Universal Ecclesiastical Order of Spiritual Baptists, budget $176,800. Funds disbursed by the ministry, $25,000. West Indian United Spiritual Baptist Sacred Order Incorporated, budget $159,400. Funds disbursed by the ministry, $15,000. Mount Sinai Deliverance Spiritual Baptist Church, funds disbursed, $5,000. St. Catherine's Spiritual Baptist Church, funds disbursed, $4,000. Star of the Sea Spiritual Baptist Church, funds disbursed, $10,000. The Spiritual Baptist Sanctuary, funds disbursed, $5,000.
Member for Princess Tong.
Madam Speaker, again through you to the Honourable Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts, question number 126.
Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With respect to question 126A to C, 22 applications were received and funding was approved for 16 organizations. A breakdown of the amounts requested and the amounts approved and disbursed by the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts for PAGWA 2016 celebrations is as follows. Barakpur United Hindu Sabha, budget $24,600. Funds disbursed by the ministry, $5,000. Chanka Trace Pagwa Organization, budget $146,000. Funds disbursed, $10,000. Hanuman Milan Mandir, budget $7,500. Funds disbursed by the ministry, $2,000. Hindu Siva Sang, budget $74,300. Funds disbursed, $10,000. Kabir Chawra Math TNT Incorporated, budget $96,500. Funds disbursed, none. Kabir Updash Universal Ashram Association, budget $21,000. Funds disbursed by the ministry, $5,000. Kali Mata Bhavan, budget $5,000. Funds disbursed by the ministry, $1,500. Kendra Pagwa Festival, budget $663,300. Funds disbursed by the ministry, $35,000. Lakshmi Narayan Bhakti Mandali, budget $18,400. Funds disbursed, none. Pranava Educational Institute, budget $28,050. Sums disbursed, none. Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha of Trinidad and Tobago, budget $1,251,000. Funds disbursed, $50,000. Satya Drishti Spiritual and Sporting Group, budget $12,500, funds disbursed $3,000. Sri Parameshwari Durga Devi Ashram Incorporated, budget $32,000, funds disbursed $5,000. Shiva Jyoti Hindu Organization, budget $24,000, funds disbursed none. St. Augustine Ramlila Committee, budget $28,800, funds disbursed $5,000. Siddhi Vinayaka Social and Cultural Group, budget $12,300, funds disbursed none. St. Helena Development Corporation, budget $141,700, funds disbursed $15,000. The Hindu Festival Society, budget $117,000, funds disbursed $7,000. The National Pagua Council of Trinidad and Tobago, budget $229,000, funds disbursed $50,000. The Shiva Dharam Sabha of Trinidad and Tobago, budget $15,200, funds disbursed $4,000. The Vishnu Mandir, budget $8,000, funds disbursed $2,000. Williamsville Historical Days and Festivals Committee, budget $12,200, funds disbursed none.
Honorable Minister, I have noted the disparity in terms of the requests coming from several organizations for both Pagua and Spiritual Baptist Liberation Day. And my question to you is that seeing that there's such a huge disparity in terms of what was requested and what was actually given as contributions from the government, are you as Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts comfortable with this situation, seeing that your ministry has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayers' dollars on so-called disease?
Let me comment that every grant is taken on its merit, and a number of the applications are received for Pagua from some of the organizations, repeat times for different ones of the other Hindu festivals. The Spiritual Shorter Baptist Day, being the major celebration of the Spiritual Baptist faith, would have received more money than the Pagua festival, because the major festival of the Hindu faith is Diwali, as is evidenced by its having a national holiday, which would have received the major contribution of the funding from the government. So I am comfortable that the government does its best to support all of the festivals on the merit of each application that is received from the institutions.
Member for Princestown.
Madam Speaker, through you to the Honourable Minister. Honourable Minister, sometimes a little bit hard of hearing. I want you...
Member for Princestown, please.
Member for Princestown, Madam Speaker.
Could you withdraw that statement?
Madam Speaker, I withdraw. Madam Speaker, I just want to get from the Honourable Minister that...
He's not saying you want to say.
No. That having indicated that you are comfortable with several organizations having applied, especially religious organizations in this country, applying for assistance and contributions from the government, that you are comfortable as a minister with responsibility for community development, culture and the arts, being unable to accede to many of these requests for funding for religious events in this country, but you find yourself as Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts in a comfortable position to support so-called disease while the Ministry of Tourism has pulled out of the project.
I won't allow that question. Member for Couva South.
Thank you, Speaker, to the Honourable Minister. In her delivery and indicating to the sum in which she indicated sums were disbursed to a number of organizations, there were a couple of organizations that got zero funding. Will the minister provide the reason or reasons as it relates to why these organizations got zero funding?
every application that is received is considered with respect to the amount requested, previous applications that may have been made by the organization, the impact of the event, the capacity of the group to carry out the event, the releases available, and the number of organizations that are represented by the applicants. In some cases, when applications are made, further information is required, and the groups do not submit, and that also affects the ability of the ministry to disperse the funds. So in each of these individual cases, I do not have the exact reasons with me, but I can provide those at a later date.
Member for Princess Town.
Madam Speaker, to the Honourable Minister. Honourable Minister, I have noted that members of the Islamic community have complained publicly.
Member, one, there should be no preamble statement if you're going to ask a question. And let me caution you. If your question is going to be about the Islamic community, I'm not going to allow it on the basis of it's a fresh question. Member for Couva South.
The information will be sent. Could you provide a timeline, Minister?
What I would ask is that constitutes a fresh question. Member for Naparima.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and through you to the Minister of Tourism, question number 120.
Minister of Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Through you. The Ministry of Tourism and the Tourism Development Company have been working to promote domestic tourism in Trinidad and Tobago. In fiscal 2016, the Ministry, through the Tourism Development Company, which is the implementation arm, will be embarking on a domestic tourism initiative entitled Stay to Getaway. This initiative is intended to increase occupancy rates during the slow period, increase the uptake on tours, improve general knowledge of the destination Trinidad and Tobago, engender appreciation and loyalty in residents, create awareness of our tourism product, increase domestic tourism, create an opportunity for our people to holiday at home, and create employment for the tourism supply chain. The Stay to Getaway campaign was last executed in 2011 and focused primarily on accommodation. This year, the program is being expanded to include accommodation specials and packages, tours and visits to various communities, sites and attractions, and soft adventure activities like geocaching. The Tourism Development Company is presently in the process of engaging stakeholders and community groups in order to ensure that there is inclusion of a wide variety of offerings and prices and the effective execution of the initiative. A final general stakeholder meeting on the Stay to Getaway campaign will be held by the TDC before the official launch of the Stay to Getaway campaign in early July. This program will be countrywide. In relation to product development, the Ministry and the TDC are working with communities to develop and improve their product offerings in order to generate income and employment. In order to achieve this objective, discussions and site visits have been conducted in various constituencies, including Naparima. A list of preliminary sites have been identified for development in the constituency of Naparima, which includes the St. Madeleine Clubhouse, the Ramlila Grounds at Cedar Hill, Irie Village First Presbyterian Church, the Mud Volcano at Barrackpore, and Malgritude Tunnel, and will be finalized following discussions with the corporations. Consultations with the 14 regional corporations are planned for fiscal 2016, and this consultative process will assist the Ministry of Tourism and the Tourism Development Company with project identification, development, maintenance, and management issues towards implementation in fiscal 2017 and beyond.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will the Honourable Minister indicate what incentives might be considered or will be disbursed to encourage the staycation?
Minister of Tourism.
Okay, the staycation or the Stay to Getaway campaign It's basically built around providing marketing support to the different stakeholders. So those consultations and engagements are taking place right now. It's marketing support.
Member for Naparima.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And through you to the Minister of Works and Transport, question number 121.
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you yet again, Madam Speaker. In respect of Part A, the criteria used by the Ministry to prioritize roadworks across the country are based on the following. 1. The strategic plan of the Ministry of Works and Transport. 2. The condition of the particular roadway and the urgency of the public need or needs. 3. Connectivity with respect to highways and main roads. 4. The volume of traffic in the vicinity and the region. 5. Road access to industrial, recreational, and cultural sites, and its linkage to developed and rural areas. 6. Emergency and natural disasters. And 7. The availability of funding for executing projects. In respect of Part B, the Ministry acknowledges receipt of a list of roads identified for repair from and by the Member of Parliament for Naparima. And C, the Ministry is in the process of examining and costing the necessary repair and upgrade work on roads identified by all elected members of Parliament. The commencement date for roadworks will be determined when this review process is complete. Thank you.
Member for Naparima.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. In view of the fact and given the criteria that you have outlined, that the Garth Road from Williamsville Junction to Naparima Maya Road, which is listed, has 22 unattended landslips. Could you give us an idea when work will commence on that, because it's affecting residents significantly?
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The same criteria will apply, and the road works will commence, as I have indicated before, when the review process applying that criteria is complete.
Member for Naparima.
Could the Minister please indicate whether that will take 2 years, 3 years, or 5 months, please, so that my constituents will have an idea of when remedial action will be taken?
I can assure your constituents that the process that I have described is underway, actively underway, and as soon as this is complete, action will be taken on that particular road, as indeed it is taken on roads all across Trinidad and Tobago.
Member for Naparima.
So therefore, I'll be correct to tell my constituents that I have not got an answer to their concern.
You can tell your constituents what you wish, but they'll be wise enough to listen to what this minister has said, and I'm sure they'll be better guided.
Member for Couva South.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Through you, question 113 to the Minister of Works and Transport.
Minister of Works and Transport.
I thank you very much again, Madam Speaker. In respect of Part A, there is one Ministry of Works and Transport project on the Bucaro Main Road in McBean, which is 85% complete. The stoppage of works along this road is due to the non-payment of claims made by the contractor under the previous government from the fiscal year 2014-2015. In respect of Parts B and C, the resumption of works on this project is linked to the finalization of the audit process for claims from 2014 to 2015 financial period. The Ministry of Works and Transport is currently engaged in this very necessary audit process, and all steps will be taken to pay contractors for works that have been verified. Works should therefore recommence when that process is well and truly complete.
Member for Princess Town.
Madam Speaker, through you to the Honourable Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs, question number 127.
Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Under subhead 68 of the Ministry of Sport and Youth Affairs, a project titled A National Academy of Sport does not exist under the sport portfolio.
Member for Tabakit.
Question number 138 to the Minister of Finance.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Answer to Part A, 28.4%. Answer to Part B. What happened? 28.4%. Got it? Answer to Part B, $5 billion.
Madam Speaker, 28.4% in Part A represents what dollar value in terms of expenditure?
$1.621 billion.
Member for Tabakit.
Minister of Finance, through you, Madam Speaker. What was the total projected expenditure under the PSIP program for 2016?
$7 billion.
Member for Tabakit.
Question number 139 to the Minister of Works and Transport.
Minister of Works and Transport.
Thank you yet again, Madam Speaker. In respect of Part A, in 2008, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, via the Ministry of Works and Transport, authorized the National Infrastructure Development Company Limited, NIDCO, to act as the implementing agency for the construction of the Solomon Ho-Choi Highway extension to Point 14, commonly called the Point 14 Highway. In this context, a design-build contract was awarded to Constructora OAS SA with AECOM USA Incorporated as the supervising consultant and NIDCO as the employer on the project. In this context, Madam Speaker, the government per se was not involved in any negotiations with the contractor, Constructora OAS, or any other local contractor or contractors for completion of the Point 14 highway. At any rate, Constructora OAS has abandoned the site, and for that reason and more, the contract is being reviewed.
Member for Princess Town.
Honourable Minister, can you indicate to us who this person is who has filled the position of Chief Executive Officer at the sport company?
Madam Speaker, we have an acting CEO, Mr. Adrian Raymond, the incumbent, and we're in the process of advertising to recruit a full-time CEO.
Member for Princess Town.
Honourable Minister, can you give us an idea or time frame in terms of when would this position be advertised?
Because, as said previously, just now, it was advertised already. We are finalizing with the recruitment agency, and interviews will start within the next few days.
Member for Princess Town.
Madam Speaker, to the Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs, question number 129.
Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. All remaining works on the project are expected to be completed by December 31st, 2016. The total amount expended on the project since September 8, 2015 is estimated at $5,444,200 $255.20, VAT inclusive, and is summarized as follows. Security, which was partially incurred before September 8th, $725.90. Landscaping, grass cutting, $226,550. CCTV installation, some of that incurred before September 8th, $719,774.19. Site office maintenance, $32,929.71. General maintenance, $12,946.50. Miscellaneous, portable toilets and temporary electricity supply, etc., $179,729.90. And consultancy, design, review, and development of tender packages, $3.5 million, $65,000. A total of, as I said before, $5.444, $255.20.
Honorable members, the question time has been expired, and there has been indication from the Chief Whip that all unanswered questions will be postponed to the next sitting of the House. Yes?
Request for leave to move the adjournment of the House on definite matters of urgent public importance, statements by ministers, personal explanations, introduction of bills, motions related to the business or sittings of the House and moved by a minister, public business, private business, motions.
Member for Oropouche East.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Whereas the Attorney General was aware of the $1.2 billion claim brought by the Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago in 2013 against Mr. Malcolm Jones for the breach of his fiduciary duty as Executive Chairman in relation to the failed gas-to-liquid project, and whereas the Attorney General gave instructions to attorneys representing Petrotrin to file a notice of discontinuance, thereby bringing the legal proceedings to an end prior to the commencement of the trial, which effectively ended any independent, impartial, and judicial attempt to bring accountability and transparency to a matter involving $1.2 billion of taxpayers' money lost. And whereas information in the public domain suggests that there was no thorough assessment of the evidence prior to the decision to discontinue, and whereas, Madam Speaker, there has been a lack of due diligence and disclosure by the Attorney General concerning the discontinuance of this matter, which has fueled claims of political interference in the matter, and whereas the Attorney General has, in relation to this matter, proffered incomplete and unsung legal advice to the Parliament and the national community, and whereas the Attorney General has, as a consequence of the foregoing, conducted himself in a manner to compromise his office, be it resolved that this Honourable House express its loss of confidence in the Attorney General and call on the Prime Minister to immediately relieve him of his portfolio of Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, today we meet for one of the most important motions, one of the most important piece of business that a parliament could consider in modern time. Madam Speaker, I want to begin by indicating to the member for San Fernando West that we raise this motion and will debate this motion with no ill will, no malice, no hate, and no hostility to the member for San Fernando West. We are parliamentary colleagues while being opponents, and this matter is not to be taken as a personal matter against the member for San Fernando West. In fact, Madam Speaker, my colleagues and I will prove that the Attorney General gravely misconducted himself in the single, inarguably, the biggest political scandal and cover-up in this nation's history. It is It is the largest financial scandal in history. Twice the value of the Piarco International Airport, bigger than the Brian Lara scandal at the stadium in Taruba. And, Madam Speaker, it is equivalent to the withdrawal from the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. Madam Speaker, let us begin at the beginning, if we can. It was a warm September evening on September 9th when the member for San Fernando West excitedly sauntered onto the stage at Queen's Hall to present himself to His Excellency, oblivious of the law and protocol that the member cannot take his oath of office before his Prime Minister takes his oath of office. And so he enthusiastically recited an oath of office as this nation's Attorney General, only to be told that it was a breach of protocol and indeed law. This misstep set in train a series of mishaps, misadventures, misspeak, misfortune, and mistakes, some more important than others, that led us to this rainy day in June and led us to this journey when the House today must consider expressing its complete lack of confidence in the member for San Fernando West and Attorney General. But, Madam Speaker, we are not here today to talk about the blunders and the bungling. We are not here today to talk about all the inaccurate statements or misstatements. We are not here to talk about the incorrect assertions and downright misrepresentations, all of which cannot be accommodated under one motion. We are here to explore and reveal one of the most scandalous and bizarre developments in our post-independence history, one that has impacted upon the national economy, our flagship petroleum firm, and indeed the workers in the energy sector. Madam Speaker, I say at the beginning, this has absolutely nothing to do with who was naive and who was duped. It has nothing to do with who made a bad decision or who was a bad manager, as some would have us believe. This, I advance at this early stage, is what we call Jones 34. This is the scandal that we face. Because what they have accused the former administration of doing, they actually did on this occasion. Madam Speaker, when I read the notes and claims and court documents, all of which we are certain the Attorney General has, it is like reading an international spy thriller. It is hard to put down. It has all the ingredients of lies, deception, conspiracy, cross-border fraud, invisible power players, visible scapegoats. It is a financial thriller, a local billion-dollar shorting. Madam Speaker, sadly, it is not fiction. The Jones papers make the Panama Papers look like a comic book. It is juicy and delicious. It is about financial crime. Madam Speaker, today the government speaks about auditing NLCB. They speak about auditing a fellow who got a $300 food card. We are talking today about almost $3 billion of taxpayers' money that disappeared. Madam Speaker, if we had prevented World GTL, gas to liquids, if we had prevented that from taking place, we would not have to dip into the Heritage and Stabilization Fund today. While the money is irrecoverable, accountability is not. Accountability and transparency is required. Madam Speaker, the story, I would like to give the story in a nutshell. I will not delay the House by quoting extensively from documents which are in the possession of the Attorney General, and for which some of these documents have been the subject of newspaper reports. Madam Speaker, in beginning, I also like to remind the country, and I speak to the national community today, not necessarily or not only members opposite. Madam Speaker, almost 100 years ago in the British Parliament, 1924, the British Parliament met to consider a motion of no confidence in His Majesty's Attorney General, Sir Patrick Hastings, MP. It was moved in the British Parliament by a former Minister of Labour, Sir Robert Horne. And Madam Speaker, it was a motion relating to the institution and subsequent withdrawal of proceedings against the editor of a newspaper. Madam Speaker, what is important for me
to make reference to here is not only that this led to the fall of the then government, but Sir Robert set the tone for that debate as I would like to set the tone for this debate with a compelling proposition. He said, and I quote, "If the administration of the law were to become subject to any considerations of political expediency, then justice as we know it would disappear. Civilized community can only enjoy full freedom if the political executive is excluded from interference with the mechanism of the administration of justice. The Attorney General must be entirely free of political influence whatsoever. He acts in a judicial capacity, and no minister, no political party is entitled to interfere with him. If crimes were not to be punished because the delinquents belong to a particular party, then the law would be mocked and justice destroyed." Unquote. Madam Speaker, the story of World GTL, and I will say in 10 minutes or less, the story. Every iota of data I use could be data in the possession of the Attorney General, if he was to read and consider. It was in and around March 2004 that one Professor Ken Julian met and brought World GTL to Trinidad and Tobago. The advisor of the Prime Minister, current Prime Minister today, brought...
Member, please, no crosstalk. Continue.
Thank you very much. Dr. Julian brought World GTL to Petrotrin. They brought, Madam Speaker, in quick time a proposal for a gas-to-liquid plant, promising initially technology, patent technology, new technology, project management, and finance to complete a GTL plant in 18 months. Petrotrin rejected a proposal brought early, and I wanted this to be clear. When World GTL came here, part of their initial proposal was ownership of the gas reserves of Petrotrin. That is what they came here for, ownership of gas reserves. Petrotrin rejected that. In 1 month record time, a proposal was made to the National Gas Export Task Force, of who that task force was chaired by the same Professor Ken Julian. So Professor Julian brought them and then chaired a task force in Port of Spain. And who knows this now? Recommended the project for Petrotrin to adopt.
What?
And the email connection here is with a company called Kenneth J. I will come to that later. So by proposal comes in March. By April, proposal accepted, and in record time, memorandum of understanding is signed. 8 weeks later, Madam Speaker, as someone who have presided over about 5 mega construction projects in this country, I can tell you that process will likely take 12 months or more with due diligence on companies coming to your country. You would have to visit, you would have to look at their work, look at their industry track record and so on. I will come to that in a few minutes. Madam Speaker, they started construction before financing was in place and before engineering was complete. There was no due diligence on this firm, this entity. The technology promise never arrived. There was no feed study, no what is called front-end engineering design. No study. As early as March 2005, Petrotrin managers declared, who is World GTL Inc.? Who are the investors? Do they have finance? Do they have industry knowledge? Do they have a license for the technology promised? What provision have they made for abandonment or non-completion? But Mr. Jones carried on. The project agreement was executed in record time in September 2005. We were spending money and giving to foreign shareholders total control of our money. So Trinidad and Tobago through Petrotrin was spending all the money, but they had 49% of the entity. They had no control over an entity, but all the money coming from Petrotrin. World GTL, Madam Speaker, bullied Petrotrin to make credit advances for everything pending finalization of financing.
Bullied?
They bullied. They demanded money to buy an old methanol plant called Premcor, saying that if we did not buy the plant quickly, the Chinese will take the plant. They said within hours, if we don't decide to buy, the Chinese go on with the plant. Well, Petrotrin, it went to Petrotrin again. Petrotrin officers, the record suggests, warned Mr. Jones and others that you cannot enter into that type of arrangement because somebody is bullying you to buy a plant in a few hours. Madam Speaker, the project was described as an extraordinary project with a factored estimate. Petrotrin began to give money from day one, advancing credit. The project started at $850 million and went up to $2.5 billion with 33 cost overruns.
Scandalous.
That is how the project began. Madam Speaker, at all time, World GTL was bleeding Petrotrin and bleeding the national economy. In the mix, at all material times, World GTL kept pressing Petrotrin for money, and foreigners were embarrassing local managers. Madam Speaker, I will just read one email, an email exchange. I believe it was in early February. Madam Speaker, it was in 2005, Madam Speaker, December, when Petrotrin wanted more time to consider financing these projects and shelling out and flinging money. The CEO of World GTL, one David Loring, President and CEO, he told Petrotrin, and I quote, he says, "My wife has more courage than Petrotrin. My wife has more courage than Petrotrin. She wired US $200,000 to Louisiana Chemical today. At some point, Petrotrin needs to stand up shoulder to shoulder with us and get construction going on the plant." Unquote. Madam Speaker, would you believe the same day Petrotrin responded, they had more courage than his wife. What? They approved $24 million for World GTL.
What?
The same day. In that month of December, $60 million went in the month. Madam Speaker, WGTL, World GTL, made out themselves as having finance or being in a position to secure financing. When Petrotrin managers and even directors raised concern about out-of-control financial administration, wanting greater transparency and accountability, WGTL shot back. Hear this in an email, 2nd February 2006, from the same rude president and CEO. He said, "We are disturbed by Petrotrin's desire to control finance, administration, and other aspects of the project." Hear what he says. "The basic structure of the agreement is what Dr. Julian, the minister, and Mr. Jones wanted. What? Namely, for us to take full control of construction and operation of the GTL plant. We were bringing the entrepreneurial spirit to Petrotrin. Your board was just to approve the subcontractor, not to manage the terms of the contract. WGTL is here because we have the expertise to drive the job." Unquote. That is the response of World GTL, telling Petrotrin, your job is not to micromanage and look at the terms of the contract, it's to give you the money, approve the contractor.
The minister.
And the minister, who was the minister at the time? Madam Deputy Speaker, I come to my Madam Speaker, I come to my recitals now, where I am, one of my recitals here is that the Attorney General compromised himself on this matter. Right. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Energy at this time was one Dr. Lenny Krishnlal Seth.
Oh, Krishnlal?
Dr. Seth is indeed a close relative of the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago. As Minister of Energy, he supervised this project, gave consent to this project, and the Attorney General was therefore duty-bound to recuse and remove himself from dealing with the World GTL matter. And that, Madam Speaker, I am saying on that alone, an Attorney General in a decent, mature democracy ought to resign from office after presiding on a matter in which a close relative had care, exercised supervision and ministerial control over a project. So uncle started and nephew finish it.
What?
That is what we are suggesting. Madam Speaker, then came the oddity of an infamous joint and several completion guarantee. Unbelievably, Petrotrin agreed to provide a guarantee to Credit Suisse to guarantee a payback to World GTL. What this means, Madam Speaker, in a nutshell, is that If you guarantee through joint and several guarantee, it means that I guarantee my part, but I guarantee your part as well. So Petrotrin guaranteed a loan saying that if the other partner default as well, I will pay. That is unbelievable. We cannot find precedents to support that. But Madam Speaker, Petrotrin raised concern, their managers, their senior staff and officers raised concern about this. In several documents at Petrotrin, senior managers called on Petrotrin to review and find an alternative financial mechanism outside of joint and several guarantee. Madam Speaker, the documents are here and they will tell you, Petrotrin, when Petrotrin was attempting this, a former board member, one Anthony Chantak, expressed deep concerns that this project was heading south with escalating project costs, market risk, and higher financial costs. Mr. Chantak, at a board meeting, also shared the view of management that they should look for alternative mechanisms for financing this project outside of a joint and several guarantee. Madam Speaker, remarkably at a board meeting on the 31st of May 2006, when board member Chantak was calling for due diligence for greater risk evaluation, the alarm went off in the middle of the meeting. Everybody walked out of the meeting. Madam Speaker, when they returned to the meeting, they all agreed to provide the guarantee. It's a phenomenal experience here. By August 2006, several committees of the board were adamant that alternative mechanisms must be found and not to do this guarantee. Mr. Jones had all of that in his possession. He knew all of that. Madam Speaker, WDGTL pressured Petrotrin again, Madam Speaker. And I want to quote from another piece of correspondence, September 7, 2006. The bottom line, they say, is that GTL project faces insolvency within a matter of days unless we close with Credit Suisse. They are saying now, the same Loring, we both knew that Petrotrin had to cover cost overruns. We both knew that. Madam Speaker, so while at the 5th of March 2004, the president of World GTL was telling Petrotrin that they are bringing finance and management and technology to the project, the same person was saying in a year and a half, we entered the relationship as a project developer. Madam Speaker, 3 human beings agreed to do a bridging loan of $60 million, Madam Speaker, at a subcommittee meeting of the board. On the same day, Mr. Jones wrote to Credit Suisse promising that Petrotrin board will approve a loan of $650 million, a project loan. Wow. 125 million United States dollars. Wow. Madam Speaker, Petrotrin initial investment was only supposed to be 60 million TT dollars. They were supposed to invest 60 million TT dollars. They end up guaranteeing a loan with that bizarre guarantee. For now, at that time, 125 million US dollars.
How much smoke alarm went off?
That is after the smoke alarm went off.
And how much time?
Madam Speaker, let us fast forward quickly to 2009. World GTL is placed into receivership. Petrotrin has to make good its guarantee. And they have to pay back billions, almost $3 billion paid back to Credit Suisse, who called on them to pay back when the project bust. Workers lost bonuses. There's something called variable pay. The workers in the energy sector could not get their variable pay because Petrotrin spent out the money to pay back the loan, and that could not be factored in as what is called net income. Workers lost millions and millions of dollars. That matters before the industrial court now.
Yes, sir.
Madam Deputy Speaker, let me tell you that NIB, National Insurance Board, in and around September 2006, approved an investment of $60 million to World GTL. So today they complain that somebody got a food card for $300. They want to audit them. But you cannot increase food card. You cannot increase pension from NIB. You cannot give any benefit because NIB squandered $80 million on World GTL. Madam Speaker, that money was written off. I am building the case of this mammoth financial scandal. Madam Speaker, I am advancing the point that nothing here was accidental. It was a systematic, calculated, deliberate, and willful assault on the finances of Petrotrin and Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Jones has 45 years experience in energy management. He will not do that in his private life. How will do that? How will do that leading the state sector company? The Attorney General, if he would have considered these matters and read the documents, could not in good conscience go and withdraw a matter like this before the court. Madam Speaker, NIB lost $60 million of taxpayers' money. The chairman of NIB at the time was Calder Hart. The recommendation to invest in World GTL came from the NIB Investment Committee, chaired by Calder Hart. So Calder Hart took up $60 million and put it into World GTL, and NIB today has written off that. They have written off that. Do you know Neelan Massey? Neelan Massey was working for a subcontractor, Neelan Massey Engineering. They lost $40 million. Neelan Massey. Guardian Holding, a private company. You know, they were bringing the entrepreneurial spirit, but they robbed the entrepreneurs of Trinidad and Tobago too. Guardian Holding lost $30 million on an investment in WGTL. Madam Speaker, UTT, is it UTT? I am told that UTT under Ken Julian also invested. I'm not sure of that. We'll check that. Again, Madam Speaker, they were taking a bucket and dumping money. They were pouring good money after bad money to try and reclaim lost money. That is what they were doing. And 3 people took a decision.
That does sound like a bucket, no? An excavator.
Madam Speaker, do you know the decision to give a guarantee of $125 million? That decision was made by a board through a wrong-rubbing process. They call up everybody on the phone and say, listen, we want to guarantee $800 million to Credit Suisse. You agree or not? By phone, that the $800 million was squandered in a wrong-rubbing process. Madam Speaker, the point I'm making is that Mr. Jones presided over that the information is there and the Attorney General has it. And the course would have moved and moved and moved. I want to go through that quickly, Madam Speaker, because I don't want to spend too much time. The information is there. The Attorney General, and Madam Deputy Speaker, let us come to the Attorney General and his case now. By September 2015, out comes a newly minted Attorney General related to a former Minister of Energy who presided over this matter. And the Attorney General was before a high-profile member of the PNM, the Public Relations Officer of everything. And I am advancing the argument that the member for San Fernando West operated like the PRO of the party, not as the guardian of the public interest. The member for San Fernando West bowed to the dictates of the party and the energy czars. He announced on his entry to office, I will be reviewing all the matters he will be reviewing. What did he review between September to December? What did you review? It was only until February 2016, I believe in and around the 16th of February, that the Attorney General met with counsel on this matter. He had received a letter in November 30th, 2015, advising him of this from an attorney at law with a package. The Attorney General tells us elsewhere that there was no file, there was no documents, there were nothing. But yet in a letter from the very Attorney General, Madam Speaker, and that letter dated February 1st to Mr. Varun Debadine, the Attorney General attaches a list of documents, 18 documents. He says lists of documents, we have 18 of statement of case, claim form, defendant application, and so on and so on. But then tells the public we have nothing, no documents available. But if you had no documents available, what steps did you take? What steps did you take between September to February to manage this? And I want to remind the Honorable House, Madam Speaker, that in this matter, under the former administration, Cabinet took a decision that the Attorney General will manage these matters for a reason. The financial magnitude of these matters meant that if Petrotrin were to lose in arbitrations or in court, the Treasury would have to pay $2 billion. $2 billion. Also, Madam Speaker, you could not have asked Petrotrin to take lead on those issues when it is some of the same persons would have been involved in the matter in the first place in the World GTL. So you could not have asked Petrotrin to take the lead. Cabinet decision was that the Attorney General take the lead, handle it with the care, skill, diligence. That has not been changed to our knowledge. But Petrotrin also did a resolution of the board to give care to the Attorney General. So that today I ask the Attorney General whether or not the Petrotrin board has taken any steps to revoke that resolution. Because if they did not, it means this Attorney General has custody of the matter, has to provide the skill, the diligence, and the care of the matter. But what care did he provide, Madam Speaker? What care? Met on the 16th with the lawyers, in which an opinion came to him. The Attorney General said it was the first time he received an opinion from one Mr. Nelson. That opinion is dated October 11, 2015. So the first day the Attorney General gets it in his hand, February 16, 2016. But the opinion is dated October 11th. What did you do? They spent time liming, gallerying, driving through San Fernando, hanging out from the side of a van. They spent time doing that, but not time doing the hard work of the ministry. But Madam Speaker, how could an opinion dated October 11th come to an Attorney General in the next year, February 16th? Remarkably, Petrotrin board now meets within 48 hours at a hurriedly assembled meeting of Petrotrin board. They take a decision to withdraw the matter from the court. Now, they did in 48 hours, no consideration. The Attorney General will not call upon Mr. Russell Martin or Senior Counsel or any other legal light to give a second opinion. And that opinion was based on an issue of disclosure. Madam Speaker, I could put it to you in this language. If any member opposite or if any citizen goes to a doctor, God forbid, and the doctor says, look, bad news for you, we did the blood test and so on. It looked like cancer. What do? Lie down on the operation theater one time? You rush into the operation theater and say, look, cut off what you have to cut off. No. Due diligence, you will get a second opinion, do over the blood test. You might even go abroad and do that. You would want a second and a third opinion. You want to tell me that on February 16, the Attorney General met with the council on this matter, and 48 hours later, Petrotrin withdraws the matter. And then the Attorney General claims, I had nothing to do with it, that is Petrotrin. That is Petrotrin. But at that meeting, they referred the opinion and that part of the opinion to Petrotrin. So the Attorney General cannot tell us that he had nothing to do with it. This was Petrotrin business. No, no, no. As Attorney General, you had the care of a $3 billion matter. Then the Prime Minister comes back from one of his many trips abroad. He came back from his 10th trip abroad. In the airport, he said, that had nothing to do with me or the cabinet, it's Petrotrin. So the Prime Minister takes the same approach. This is a Prime Minister who chastened down the Parliament for $30,000. He wants the money.
Want the money right now.
So this Prime Minister is concerned with $30,000. Quarreling on a public platform for $30,000. Take a hands-off approach. It's not me. The cabinet didn't take no decision. That's Petrotrin. Who put the Petrotrin board? They are political appointees. It is you. Madam Speaker, that resolution of the board where they decided is another amazing matter. The chairman recused himself. You don't know who chaired the meeting. You don't know whether a note was prepared on this matter. Was a note prepared? Was it sent to members of the board? Did they have time to consider? Did they wrong Robin on that as well? They're giving everybody named Robin a bad name. Huh? And Madam Speaker, that meeting, Madam Speaker, is under a cloud of confusion, is in fog, that meeting. where they decided immediately to withdraw the matter. Madam Speaker, I don't want to read at length, Madam Speaker, from newspapers and so on, but the Express responded, Mr. Jones win, but TNT loses. It is hard to swallow the reality that state-owned Petrotrin was taken for a $1.2 billion ride by foreign smart men. Express again, law applied to some. J2UM, drop cases against union members too. Newsday, most unsatisfactory. I don't want to delay the House by reading these matters, Madam Speaker, reading in detail. But what I want to indicate that Petrotrin acted on the advice-prodding influence of the Attorney General and the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, they claim, and you know, when we ask the Attorney General to tell us about this in the public domain, what do we get? Madam Speaker, you know, I want to just tell you, I spent some time reading a book called In and Out of Politics, Tales of the Government of Dr. Eric Williams. Madam Speaker, at page 97, Winston Mahabir is the author, a former government minister of the PNM. This is good history. I think the member for Arima was on the compound then. And he says here, listen to this one. Winston Mahabir says, we invented in government a term. We invented a term in government. It was called to sukaranize. To sukaranize was to do what only Lionel Frank Sukaran could. Talk on every subject with an air of authority. Talk for as long as possible with the maximum repetitiveness and minimum content. Bore everyone to distraction without boring a hole in any argument. Madam Speaker, it was to use a pseudo-smooth approach. Keep talking in the hope of the immortality by volume. Unquote. Madam Speaker, I hope we will not have a response that will just be to sukaranize on the issue, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, what has the Attorney General told us? He told us that it was wrong for the former Attorney General, Madam Speaker, to take control, care, and close supervision of this matter. What was wrong about that? We had to take control of it, and I explained the reasons why before. The Attorney General told us that the attorney, one attorney did not hand over files, witness statements, and so on. That attorney wrote a letter to the Attorney General as well, dated, I believe it was around the 1st, 2nd of February this year. 2nd of February, where the attorney is at pains to point out that I did pass documents to the Attorney General on the 30th of November last year. Do you know, Madam Speaker, that attorney gives out here about 5 examples of trying to meet with the Attorney General, chasing him down. In one case, he said, when you never responded to my phone calls and I talked to your friends, I even met some of your friends, the member for Port of Spain North, on January 23rd at the Cancer Fete in San Fernando, in which I asked him to please contact the Attorney General. We have to talk about the World GTL matter at court. So the lawyers were at pains to chase down the Attorney General on this matter. They did not leave it. And why did the Attorney General leave it until the matter was coming up at the court? Why? Was it political influence? Was it a plan to remove Malcolm Jones from the court? Because, Madam Speaker, the Attorney General did something else that is inappropriate and compromised his position. And that is why he could not give the correct assessment of this matter. Far apart from his lack of care, his lack of interest, his lack of consideration on this matter, the Attorney General, to our knowledge, sat in a meeting of cabinet that approved Malcolm Jones on October 8th as a member of the subcommittee, the Energy Subcommittee. Did the Attorney General tell the government, I cannot participate in that because I have the care of a matter in which Mr. Jones is the defendant? Did the Attorney General tell his government that I have to advise you that we ought not to appoint this man? He's before the court on a $2 billion matter. But by appointing Malcolm Jones to the Energy Subcommittee, you have prejudiced this matter. You have pre-tried this matter. You are saying he's innocent. And the Attorney General ought not to have been a part of that cabinet decision. And that is what they did, Madam Speaker. They appointed him. They appointed Mr. Ken Julian, whose name is called in this as well, as advisor to the Prime Minister on energy matters. Madam Speaker, the same players from 2004, 2005, it is like a serial. The same characters are back. No wonder Mr. Jones said in a report in The Guardian, he said, if I had to do it over again, I will do it over again. And we believe that they are doing it over again. They are doing it over again. So the Attorney General ought to recuse himself. He may have allowed the member for Port of Spain North to take control of this matter. Although the member for Port of Spain North also have a question to answer on the World GTL matter as well as other matters. Madam Speaker, they say that evidence from the arbitration was withheld from Petrotrin. The Prime Minister said this in his interview in the airport. He said, well, they're holding back evidence, the information from arbitration. What did you do? You are the government. What did you do to get the information, to get the documents from the arbitration to Petrotrin lawyers in this matter against Mr. Jones? You did nothing. And the reason you did nothing, because there was a political conspiracy to cover up this matter and to remove and withdraw the Malcolm Jones case from the High Court. That is why you did nothing. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, the timeline is there. The Attorney General says no files pass and so on. We have dealt with that. Then they come with $45 million paid in legal fees. Do you know, Madam Speaker, the magnitude of this matter? The weight of this matter? That 2 arbitrations dealing with this matter in Canada and the UK awarded legal fees of $39 million. So when you quote up and down the place $45 million in legal fees, 5 lawyers, in the arbitration they assess costs, legal fees on both arbitration was how much? Was $39 million. So, Madam Speaker, I hope they are not coming with that argument today about that legal costs and so on. Madam Speaker, the role of the Attorney General, and my motion speaks to it, Madam Speaker. This Attorney General knew, he was aware of the claim, that is clear. The Attorney General, by sitting with counsel and all counsel meeting on February 16th, inadvertently or not, and it was not inadvertent, gave instructions to attorneys to take the matter of Nelson advice to the Petrotrin board. That advice had the effect of withdrawing the matter from the court. So he's guilty of that. In the public domain, there have been no assessment of the evidence, no issue. Madam Speaker, the Attorney General has displayed a complete lack of care of this particular matter, a lack of due diligence, a lack of disclosure. Madam Speaker, the Attorney General came to the Parliament, told us he has passed the papers to the Law Association, assuming the Law Association asked him for that. Today we are no better off because we have not been provided with any enlightenment by the Law Association on this matter as well. Madam Speaker, as a consequence of what I have announced here, as a consequence of what I have said, I will sum up to say that the Attorney General, the member for San Fernando West, acted as the closer on this matter. There's a show on TV called The Closer. He was the closer. He was identified by the party and the energy czars to close this matter, to bring it to conclusion, to remove it from the court. A mature, responsible Attorney General would have looked at this matter and indicated that given the gravity, given that one administration had initiated this matter, my administration is in place, let the court decide. Assuming but not admitting that the Attorney General is right, because the Attorney General has said he was in fear that the matter would fail at court. Assuming but not admitting he's right, then the matter would not have progressed much further in the court. The court would have thrown it out, and the Attorney General could have gone unscathed to the national community and say, the court, the Supreme Court, dealt with that matter, not me as a politician and as Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago. They did not do that. They did not do that. Madam Speaker, he surrendered his responsibility to the public to assume the more comfortable role as defender of the political party. And I go back to Sir Robert Horn in my initial statement. When an Attorney General bows to the wishes of a political party, justice is destroyed. And on this matter, it is not to point fingers. We are not here to point fingers. They will stand up to say, well, what about Section 34? What about live sport? What about BTAM, this and so on? It is not here to do that. You promised better. When you came into government, you promised better. There is an expectation. There is an expectation that you would act better. So you don't come today because their strategy is to blame their political inheritance for their failure. That is their strategy. They explain their failure by political inheritance. And that, Madam Speaker, ought not to be the approach. It is not to say I point one finger at you and you point 10 at me. It is not that at all. It's to explain the position why the member for Diego Martin West in September 2009 in an appropriation budget, a budget speech, would you believe the member for Diego Martin West, now Prime Minister, stood in the House and screamed about the cost escalation in this matter? So, Madam Speaker, today I want to indicate to you without straining the facts that enough has been said, enough has been shown to demonstrate that this Jones matter was withdrawn without proper consideration and with indecent haste, and the Attorney General could not adequately consider the facts and examine the documents. This House cannot contemplate in silence such a dereliction of a fundamental duty and cannot pass over without dire consequence an act for which we have described today. It strikes a most deadly blow at our respect for law and justice in this country. We have built a case to properly call for the resignation and or the removal of the Attorney General on this financial scandal. And Madam Speaker, I beg to move.
Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. After that scintillating performance, I beg to second the motion and I reserve the right to speak.
Honorable members, the motion being seconded, I shall now propose the question for debate. Be it resolved that this Honorable House express its loss of confidence in the Attorney General and call on the Prime Minister to immediately relieve him of the portfolio of Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago. Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me the privilege of participating in the dispelling of what was nothing short of a rant on the part of the last speaker. You know, the Honourable Member for Oropouche West has been a member of this House for quite some time. And when one sees someone confined to reading a speech on a motion such as this, it tells you that there's a lack of oomph and belief in what one is putting forward. Madam Speaker, I've heard the call of my grandfather's name. I'm surprised I didn't hear my mother's name. I heard my name. And I'm very pleased to actually be the subject of a motion such as this.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to hear this.
Because I'll tell you why. It warms me sincerely to have the opposition, led by the member for Siparia, the other leader of the opposition, as he wanted to be the member for Oropouche East, have no confidence as the intention for their mission in relation to me. I do not wish to be in the confidence of this opposition when Attorney General foisted upon this country existed in the person of Anand Ram Logan, the next in line Attorney General Gerald Ramley, the next in line Attorney General Wayne Sturge. You see, these are not the examples of what I strive to be in life, with the greatest of respect. The motion before us today is a motion posited upon a few statements which the Honourable Member for Oropouche East himself contradicted. He says, I gave instructions to attorneys representing Petrotrin to file a notice of discontinuance. He says, Information in the public domain suggests there was no thorough assessment. He says there's been a lack of due diligence and disclosure by the Attorney General. He, in his contribution this afternoon, went through, starting with a quotation by Sir Robert Horne, as to how much disdain a parliament and a people should have with political interference in matters. He then essentially proceeded to confuse the population by drawing relevance to the matters in the World GTL matter to the claim against Malcolm Jones. So the first thing that I must do is to say, I have no brief for Malcolm Jones. I have no brief for the board of Petrotrin that would have sat in the period 2004 to 2009. And I say so knowing that I'm not the first member of a PNM government to think that way. I want to put on the public record the opinion in the World GTL Inc. Petrotrin matter, which resulted in the springboarding of action by the government of Trinidad and Tobago by Petrotrin against World GTL. That opinion was obtained on the 3rd of September 2009.
What?
Secondly, Petrotrin's request for arbitration in the World GTL matter did not happen under the stewardship of the leader of the opposition, then as Prime Minister, the member for Siparia. Certainly it didn't. The record will show that on the 23rd of February 2010, following the delivery of an opinion on the 3rd of September 2009, that Petrotrin commenced the proceedings to enforce its rights by filing a request for arbitration on the 23rd of February 2010. That was met by the respondents filing an answer on the 25th of April 2010. So I don't know where Oropouche East is going, hot and sweaty, reading from a document to do as if they brought the Petrotrin World GTL arbitration. That was not the case. And I want to point out here that I will focus upon the propriety of Petrotrin as a multi-billion-dollar company with a board of directors having as its sole shareholder corporation sole in the person of the Ministry of Finance, having under law the statutory obligation in Section 60 of the Companies Act and in Section 99 of the Companies Act to manage its own affairs. Little did Oropouche East understand well enough how true the words he quoted from the English Parliament are. The disdain to be poured upon political interference, especially by an Attorney General, found itself into the very life and being of the UNC's management. But permit me today to take us through a little history. You will recall, Madam Speaker, 13th of August 2010, one Anand Ramlogan, appointed as Attorney General acting under Siparia's tutelage, themselves receiving from themselves silk at the same time. What we had, Madam Speaker, was the announcement of an A-team, a 5-man team, Newman QC, Akbar Ali, Martin Hall, Gerald Ramdeen, Mark C. Persad. The matters disclosed then in that press conference: University of Trinidad and Tobago, UTT, Sport Company, Petrotrin, T&Tech, E-Tech, Scarborough Hospital, MV Su. The words from Anand Ramlogan then: no price is too heavy for this country to pay to unravel the corruption and mismanagement that took place under the PNM, to ensure it never happens again, and to ensure the public sense of outrage as it appeals to justice is one that is satisfied, provided there is no cause to answer. 13th of December 2010, Anand Ramlogan receives a letter from Lindsay Gillett where he says that Petrotrin proposes to take legal action as is necessary against the former members of the board of directors, in the plural. On the 1st of March 2011, there's a legal opinion from Vincent Nelson QC, and permit me to deal with the legal opinion of Vincent Nelson QC of that date.
team as well.
Of that team, Nelson QC produces an opinion, and in that opinion he specifically says that he is being invited to consider a case. He considers a case against the board of directors in the plural. He says in particular that the matter is to be considered in the context of the facts that are presented to him. He draws certain limitations and caveats to his advice. He concludes and says, in light of the above, it is my opinion that consideration should be given to bringing an action against the board of directors of Petrotrin pursuant to section 99(1) of the Companies Act for recovery of sums expended under the joint and several guarantee and losses incurred by reason of failure to carry out due diligence in respect of technical and cost feasibility of the GTL plant. That goes further. After receipt of that advice, we see that there is a letter from the Ministry of the Attorney General to Lindsay Gillette. The legal opinion of Nelson is forwarded to the chairman of Petrotrin. On the 15th of March 2011, the extracts of the board meeting says that the matter is considered by Petrotrin. They want to talk to the AG more. On the 18th of March, Gillette, as chairman, writes to Anand Ramlogan. He makes certain observations on GTL. 7th of April, there is a forensic report produced by one Alex Partners UK. That is provided by way of instructions from the Attorney General. June 2011, a year after, we're talking of the December 2010 position, 6 months after, where Ramlogan goes, August 2010, skip forward to June 2011. Ramlogan comes out to the public, he says, in every single month for the rest of the year, one new case would be commenced arising out of the corruption and scandal of the previous regime. Wide-scale coverage of these events. Now, we see that Petrotrin is invited to consider next event, 4th of October 2011. A legal opinion is secured from Russell Martino SC. And Russell Martino SC is very careful in his opinion to make consideration firstly of the Nelson advice. Secondly, he says that he finds that there's a prima facie case based upon what is presented to him. He says specifically, having said there's a prima facie case of negligence disclosed from documents which I have seen, I must point out that I have not seen the minutes of relevant board of directors meetings in order to ascertain all matters which may have influenced the directors in arriving at those decisions which are prima facie open to challenge. It is important to see how they attempted to grapple with the problems and the thoughts given to them. I can only assume Mr. Nelson has seen them, and I underscore that. He says, it is important that the role played by cabinet and ministries which may affect liability be considered in relation to anything against the directors, and Petrotrin cannot complain of negligence or breach of duty of its directors if the acts complained of were authorized or approved by the shareholders of Petrotrin. Huge bit of caveat there by the Honorable Mr. Russell Martino SC. What happened next? We see on the 13th of October 2011, there's a letter to the Minister of Finance from Anand Ramlogan requesting Minister of Finance's approval to, as shareholder and corporation sole, for Petrotrin's board decision to initiate legal action. October 13th, 2011, the letter from the Attorney General, from Lindsay Gillette, Chairman of Petrotrin, to Winston Dukaran, saying Petrotrin wants to indicate its desire to pursue legal proceedings against the directors, in the plural, of Petrotrin, that the Attorney General is to assume conduct, that the conclusion in the opinion of Martino and that of Nelson is to be factored. Petrotrin will not be responsible for legal costs, and the board of directors shall authorize the Attorney General to assume conduct of the said legal proceedings. Now, we heard Oropouche East glibly come along and say, well, it was a big matter and it was serious and that's why we put the Attorney General. You know, sometimes I wonder if Oropouche East really has a law degree. And if we have to take advice from him. And if so, from where? And I say that most respectfully because it is important to understand that Section 60 of the Companies Act says, in plain English, for those who will read, subject to articles and any unanimous shareholder agreement, the directors of a company shall exercise the powers of the company directly or indirectly through employees and agents, and direct the management of the business and affairs of the company. But Section 99, which deals with fiduciary responsibilities in the Companies Act, goes further. Now stick a pin. This is the same Section 99 that they choose to sue the former directors of Petrotrin on, supposedly according to the advice of Nelson and Martineau. And subsection 6 of 99 says that no provision in a contract, articles of a company, bylaws, or any resolution relieves a director or officer of the company from the duty to act in accordance with this act or regulations, or relieves him from liability for breach of this act or regulations. But you see, in the UNC, you are invited to do as I say and not as I do. And let me tell you why. Had the member for Oropouche East bothered to consider some reflection on his legal training, if there was any, let me put it this way, in the particular field of law that I refer to. The case law is replete with references to how one is to be guided as a board of directors in relation to matters. I wish to put on the record, directors cannot delegate their exercise of best judgment. The classic case is anchored in Bolting versus Cinematograph Association, 1963, one All England Law Reports, in the words of Denning, Master of the Rolls, nominee director appointed by large shareholders to represent interests, that there is nothing wrong with taking the directions of a patron. So long as he, the director, is left free to exercise his best judgment in the interest of the company which he serves. But if he is put on terms that he is bound to act in the affairs of the company in accordance with the direction of his patron, it is beyond doubt unlawful. That was reaffirmed by the Privy Council in 2015 in the Central Bank of Ecuador and others versus Contico and others. Listen to what Lord Mance had to say in 2015 in the Privy Council. The duties of a director, both in England and the Bahamas, pursuant to Section 55 of the International Business Companies Act, were to act honestly and bona fide in the best interest of the company, to apply his mind positively to the question of what were the company's interests, to exercise independent judgment and not to fetter his discretion. If he was a nominee director, his position was no different from that of an ordinary director, and thus he was not entitled to forego or surrender to another any exercise of his discretion, however paltry the amount he was paid for the rudimentary services he rendered. Madam Speaker, I've bothered to state the law in the Companies Act. I've bothered to state the locus classicus in terms of the roots of the law, not locus but international. I bothered to state the restatement in 2015, and the reason that I have done that is to dispel the argument brought by Oropouche East, who can't keep his mouth quiet right now and is cross-talking when we sat in silence, because his statement that the cabinet had the authority to instruct the Attorney General to cause Petrotrin to merely rubber stamp and give up their discretion is an absolute breach of the law. And that is a breach of law which exposed the entire Lindsay Gillett Board of Directors to a claim for negligence under Section 99 of the Companies Act, in particular under Section 60 of the Companies Act. But let's go further. Let's deal with this. Let's look at the argument that Oropouche has now put onto the table. He says, look, big matter, AG should be involved. He says, AG had a responsibility to manage this matter. I want to take you back to the timeline as we were going along. When we look now, we see resolution by the Board of Directors of Petrotrin 16th November 2011. The resolution authorizes Attorney General Anand Ramlogan to commence legal action against former directors in accordance with the advice of Nelson and Martineau. Both of those pieces of advice say go after all the board of directors depending upon the facts of the case. We come next, we see that the ICC arbitration starts 29th of November 2012, proceedings in Toronto. As I told you, it was a PNM springboard in 2009 that launched that. There's a press release from Ramlogan on the 4th of December 2012 which says, Petrotrin has had a massive victory, ordering WGTL to pay Petrotrin's legal costs, not as Oropouche East put it, but in the sum of 14 million TT dollars. Then what do we see? May 3rd, 2013, there's a claim that is being contemplated. There is a specific and important event that happens on 3rd of May 2013. Al-Rawi, LLP, who are Petrotrin's external counsel in the London Court of International Arbitration Proceedings, says, look, we understand that you want to have a claim brought against former directors. In principle, it shouldn't be prejudicial to the arbitration proceedings. However, WGTL will certainly review the claim closely and attempt to use it to its advantage, including any language that is inconsistent. In this regard, Allen and Overy specifically said that it was imperative to align the High Court action that Petrotrin intends to take with the arbitration. Now let's connect the dots. The man who went to give evidence on behalf of Petrotrin in the arbitration proceedings is Anand Ramlogan. The man who is managing the case for Petrotrin against the law, but good with Oropouche East because he may be fine with that, against the common law, against the Privy Council judgments, against the Companies Act, Attorney General Anand Ramlogan is advised, look, you have to align these things, they may be prejudice. He instructs for a claim to be pursued. Gerald Ramdean signs a claim form, 3rd of May 2013, files that in court.
How many million they paying for that?
How many millions I'll come to in a little while. Statement of case filed in court, claiming 190 million US dollars against one man.
One director.
One director. When Martineau's advice and Nelson's advice is pellucidly clear. Check your facts. There are caveats inside of here. Make sure you got it right and sue everybody if your facts right. But let's go on. 13th of May 2013, there's a memorandum to President of Petrotrin from the Corporate Secretary, Rosanna Hospitalis. Under a UNC, there's a majority round-robin decision of Petrotrin board. Apparently that don't happen, and everybody named Robin put at risk according to Oropouche East. 10 days after the filing of the claim, we are now getting for the first time Anand Ramlogan looking for instructions from Petrotrin. 17th May 2013, case done, file already. 14 days after the filing of the claim, Anand Ramlogan sends a retainer letter to Varun Debadine, Gerald Ramdean and others. 14 days after a claim. Now anybody who has practiced law knows that there's case law from here till kingdom come that says if you file an action without authority, it is bound to be struck out. But that doesn't concern the last government. That don't concern Oropouche East. Because we come into fees in a while. 24th of May, by majority vote, approval for High Court proceedings against former director Malcolm Jones, 21 days after the claim. July 30th, we moved an application for extension for time. On the 11th of October 2013, a very important event happens. A defense is filed by Malcolm Jones. And in his defense, in paragraph 26, he sets out in plain English, the claimant has not provided disclosure on the arbitration proceedings. I will rely upon them in my defense. I want them disclosed and I reserve the right to amend my defense. I want you to mark the spot on disclosure. There's an order for standard disclosure, 23rd of December 2013. A reply is made on the 17th of January 2014. 12th of March, the defendant files a list of documents. 17th of March, claimant files a list of documents. And in the list of documents, they claim privilege on the arbitration proceedings. They will not disclose it. Let's go on. 25th of April 2014, Anand Ramlogan makes a ministerial statement on the World GTL arbitration against Petrotrin, beating his chest for the world to hear as to the successes in the World GTL arbitration, springboarded from a PNM opinion in 2009 and initiation of arbitration in February 2010. Let's go on. We skip forward now to the 24th of February 2015. General elections somewhere in the mix. Members of the opposition running up and down, panicking about San Fernando West. I had to hear certain members now present in the House talk about who my mother is and who my father is supposed to be, why they don't have different name, all sorts of things. We come down now, we're hearing it again today. Court ordered defendant is to file an application for specific disclosure, if it wants disclosure, by the 17th of April 2015. And the trial dates are fixed 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th of February 2016. Ramdeen is in court. 24th of February, application comes up again. Witness statements are bound to be filed by the 30th of October 2015. 28th of February, Debadine is asking his team to take note of the dates. 17th of April, in accordance with the court's direction, an application is filed for specific disclosure of arbitration proceedings. Now remember, Ramlogan is managing the matter. Ramlogan is witness in the arbitration proceedings. Ramlogan's A-team, Debadine and they are going ahead. This matter is being pursued with vigor. Matter is completely managed. Domain is in breach of the law by the AG's office. No problems. 9th of June 2015 is a court hearing. Ramdeen appears. Application for specific disclosure adjourned to 2nd October 2015 pending discussions. So says the court fly sheet. 20th of July, Debadine writes to Petrotrin, and in the letter he introduces the legal team for the first time to Petrotrin. He says, we are acting for Petrotrin. There's an application for disclosure. Please provide the arbitration proceedings in the WGTL matter. Give us the documents that they're asking for. There's a letter back from Petrotrin to Debadine. They promptly send all the information across to him. 11th of September 2015, Debadine is now considering in the legal team, Ramdeen advising him as counsel. And stick a pin for a moment. You will hear the name Debadine called, but I want you to bear in mind he's an instructing attorney led by Queen's Counsel, led by local junior counsel Gerald Ramdeen. An instructing attorney in this jurisdiction are used to taking instructions as to what should be done, what is to be requested, how it is to be delivered. 2nd of October, there's a court hearing. The application for specific disclosure is adjourned to the 3rd of November 2015. Time for witness statements is extended for the claimant to the 1st of December because the defendant, of course, filed all the witness statements on the 30th of October as directed. 11th of October 2015, Ramdeen is given advice by Vincent Nelson QC, and I want to spend some time on this advice. Listen to the words in the advice. The written advice produced by Vincent Nelson, the 11th of October 2015. Having considered the witness statements, there is a basis for concluding that Petrotrin Board, though bad business decisions, found itself committed to GTL Venture and World GTL. He says that may basically be considered to be a bad business decision. In the circumstances, the board was naive and probably duped. Once the board discovered how deeply committed Petrotrin had become, it appeared from the witness statements that he had considered that the company did what they could do to protect Petrotrin's assets.
Repeat that. Repeat.
Here is what he says, that once the board discovered how deeply committed Petrotrin had become, it appears from the witness statements that he reviewed that the company did what they could to protect Petrotrin's interests. In the circumstances, there is a reasonable...
Yes, continue.
No, he does not. He's calling the Judge May from advice he says he don't have, so I'm waiting to see what he has. In the circumstances, there is a reasonable likelihood that a judge would be persuaded that there was a bad business decision but no negligence.
Repeat that.
This is a matter the board will need to consider in the context of future conduct of this action. He says, I have been asked by instructing attorney in this matter to prepare a note of advice to the board of Petrotrin in relation to the company's duty to make disclosure of witness statements by former directors and senior management adduced. Those witness statements relate to matters that may be relevant to the events which are the subject of Petrotrin's legal action against the directors, the defendant Malcolm Jones. I was not involved in the relevant arbitrations, nor was I consulted in the drafting of the witness statements. I have been provided with the witness statements. I had not been provided with a copy of the arbitral award. What? And I never had a copy of these witness statements previously.
That is suppression.
So that is on the 11th of October 2015, watching down the barrel of a gun looking at you saying, specific disclosure in relation to my defense, produce the evidence. Application filed. All of a sudden, Nelson is now given, look boy, tell me if I have to disclose this. Nelson says litigation is practiced on a cards face-up position, and a court in Trinidad and Tobago is likely and will give disclosure in this matter. The witness evidence I never had, you never gave it to me. I'm now seeing it for the first time, and in looking at it for the first time, boy, this thing ain't looking like negligence at all. It now looks like a bad business decision, and it appears that business decision was one which is explainable because the board seemed to be working its way out of the difficulties. Let's go on. Let's go on. That was on the 11th of October 2015. That is the written advice of the team leader for Petrotrin, Vincent Nelson QC, Junior Gerald Ramdeen, instructing attorney Varun Debadeen. The person who would have had this advice, according to the member for Oropouche East, is none other than Anand Ramlogan, the star witness in World GTL, the man who has the opinion of Nelson, the man who retained these people who have never met Petrotrin before in their life because they introduced themselves in October 2015 for the first time. All of a sudden, people sweating.
Honorable Member for San Fernando West, your 30-minute speaking time have expired. You're entitled to 15 more minutes.
If you please.
You may
Much
proceed.
obliged, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, so here's what happens, and I want to freeze frame on this string of events right now. Here's what happens next. October 21st, Debadeen is written to by Petrotrin. Petrotrin says that they acknowledge his letter. Petrotrin says later on, and I'll come to it, that advice of October 11th was never given to Petrotrin. That is in sworn affidavit testimony by the officers of Petrotrin in the court. In fact, it's worse. That evidence, the opinion of Nelson, was certainly not in the Attorney General's office. And listen to Oropouche East and permit me to stick a pin for a moment. Oropouche East says, and he read out from a letter on the 1st of February, and he says how I had documents. He says, in the public domain, I said I had no documents. The correspondence passing between Debadeen and the Office of the Attorney General sets out with clarity no documents in the possession of the AG's office, no documents in the SG's Solicitor General's office, no documents in Petrotrin, and in the letter, Oropouche conveniently skips over the part where I say, I acknowledge you have sent me documents, and I list the documents in my letter to him, And what do I say in that position? I say to him, yes, you have sent me documents, but there are gaping holes in the record. And I cannot form an opinion on this matter as and until you provide me with documents. I go on to say, a perusal of the document says gaping holes. I say you have not provided instructions received, briefs and supplemental briefs, full pleadings, interlocutory applications, orders, lists of documents, bundles of documents, statements of fact, statements of issues, draft statements, witness proofs, correspondence, advice on evidence, and travel preparatory. That's my letter to Debadine, February 1st, 2016. Now I said that, and I wrote that specifically, because I said to myself, how could Petrotrin have no documentation, AG's office have no documentation, and I get a partial file? Surely this matter, Oropouche says is worth $14–15 million in legal fees. Surely this matter has attached it a volume of information. So I say to myself, you know what? Something doesn't smell right here. I said specifically, coming in as Attorney General into the PNM government, I would not fire a single lawyer who was working for the state prior to my entry, that I would review the matters, because the administration of justice may be prejudiced if you fire people capriciously. They would have been paid already. There must be value for money accountability. But specifically, I ain't giving them the chance to stick me to hold any of their basket. And I'll tell you why. Little known to us until we went into an all-parties conference, which I called Nelson to. I wrote to Petrotrin. I said to them, this is your matter to be conducted by you in accordance with the law. I wrote to Debadine. I wrote specifically and told him that I'm not accepting him coming off the record. I want the entire bundle of documents. I want all opinions, all advice, draft statements. Because, Madam Speaker, witness statements due to be filed in October. November, I'm getting letters saying, well, I want to come out, Ramdeen want to come out, this one want to come out. All of a sudden, I ask them for information. I say, look, I can't get through Petrotrin. You ask them for information. You know what the response to Petrotrin was? We were hired by the Attorney General. This information is privileged, and we can't give it to you, Petrotrin, even though we are your lawyers on the record and we acting for you. Don't take my word for it. Affidavit evidence, supplemental affidavit of Sharon Morris Cummings, where she goes into the fact that she says, one of her affidavits, she says, is the duty of counsel to provide names of witnesses. That was not done. Her other affidavit specifically says, in opposition to the application to come off record, she says, I was quite surprised by the request that I, Petrotrin, should provide names and contact information for potential witnesses. I didn't have conduct. Further, Debadine was on record, Ramdeen, etc., acting as attorneys in the matter. They were in possession, informed by the senior manager that she responded to Debadine, etc. And she says here, I verily believe an attorney at law cannot claim privilege against his own client, and in fact the privilege belongs to the client. So here's Petrotrin now on affidavit in the court saying, I want my documents, I'm the claimant in the matter, you had conduct of the matter, let me see the documents so I can consider it. You've asked me to consider things, and the lawyers under Ramdeen, appointed as senator by the honorable leader of the opposition, say, well, sorry, privilege, you're not the client. The Attorney General is the client. You ever hear more nonsense than that, Madam Speaker? Let's go down. We come now, Madam Speaker, the 3rd of November. On the 3rd of November, a very important event happens. There's a court hearing. Now, the court had successively adjourned the matter of the order for disclosure, pending discussions. All of a sudden, first time on the court fly sheet, application for specific disclosure comes up. Guess who does not appear on the 3rd of November? Nobody from Petrotrin. No Ramdeen, no Nelson, nobody else. Why? Why do they not turn up in relation to the application for specific disclosure? The one and only time on the record. And then the judge, of course, in an uncontested application, grants the order. Well, Madam Speaker, panic stations in UNC. Panic stations. Because right now, you're hoping the new Attorney General would have fired you. He made sure to keep you in the saddle. You're faced with a discovery of documentation-specific disclosure. You ask your Queen's Counsel for the first time, boy, take a look at this and give me some advice. The man says, but you never showed this to me before. And now that I read it, dog's dead. How do you go ahead and pursue this action? This does not look like a breach of fiduciary responsibility. It looks like a bad decision. But they made sure not to discover that and produce it to Petrotrin or to me. Because, Madam Speaker, I'll tell you why. As we progress now to the trial, and we get up to January, we get up to February, I am calling for the full papers. I cannot get the full papers. Petrotrin cannot get the full papers. What happens next? I insist to them, go to court and tell the court that I have called an all-parties conference and I want all lawyers here. What does the AG's office do? We pay for Vincent Nelson QC to come to Trinidad to sit down in the Attorney General's office with Petrotrin, and I say, tell me the whole story right now. Who turns up? Nelson, Ramdeen, Debadine, Petrotrin's two lawyers, and we sit. At that moment, Nelson says to me, didn't you get the memo? I say to him, well, what on earth do you possibly mean? He says, well, I have given written advice since October, and that written advice says important things which the board of Petrotrin must consider. That advice, he says, quite clearly, is advice that must be considered. I say, well, what on earth do you mean? Well, don't take my word for it. Take Debadine's word for it as a party to the conference. 26th of February. Sorry, the meeting was the 16th of February. 16th of February, letter from Varun Debadine to me. Reference made to the matter, all council meeting, you will recall, he calls the names of the parties, Nelson, Ramdeen. You were informed of Mr. Nelson's advice dated October 11th, contained in my letter dated October 12th, open brackets, which I left a copy of with you. I add now, for the first time, Petrotrin for the first time. Nelson apologized at the meeting. I'm sorry you didn't get it, but I sent it to Ramdeen, and he should have sent it to you. What happens next? We agreed, Debadine's words, to allow the board of Petrotrin to consider this advice and make a decision accordingly. You indicated you would contact the chairman and convene an emergency meeting to facilitate this decision so that you could report to the court. Nelson will attend tomorrow's hearing. Your instructions for tomorrow's hearing is for counsel to ask the court to vacate the trial dates, but if court is not so minded, counsel should ask the court for a hearing for the extension of time application for the filing and exchanging of claimants' witness statements. So the Attorney General quite properly says, go to court, preserve my trial, preserve the dates, argue for an extension of time, send the matter to Petrotrin board where it should always have been, let them consider the matter. Needless to say, Oropouche East can't understand that, because that is not the process which a UNC government may have dealt with the matter. He's entitled to say that. However, what I can tell you is that after that, Petrotrin takes control of the matter. Petrotrin comes on record for the claimant. Debadine is relieved and removed from the matter voluntarily, and Petrotrin begins writing to Nelson, saying to Nelson, this is what happened. Petrotrin writes a letter 23rd of February 2016. It provides the appearances. It says in that letter, you, Mr. Nelson, had requested the court grant a 1-week adjournment of the matter so that legal advice can be considered by the board members of the claimant. It's not Faris, Al-Rawi, Attorney General, San Fernando West. That's Vincent Nelson QC hired by the last government, Gerald Ramdeen, hired by the last government, going to court to tell the court that Petrotrin needs to get this now. There's a side story, as I told you. There is affidavit evidence by Petrotrin saying, we never had the advice, we had no papers, we were locked out of the matter, the matters were not brought to our attention, and the board must consider it. Cut the story short now as time runs quickly. What happened next? The board of Petrotrin took a decision by itself after considering legal advice, and the board of Petrotrin put in writing that they would end the matter, and they wrote to me telling me what they had done. Permit me quickly, in a couple of minutes I have left, to put this out. It's no mystery that Oropouche East is comfortable with Anand Ramlogan managing the matter, and I'll tell you why. Legal fees in total, Vincent Nelson, in total from the last government, so far and counting, a small amount, $55,583,826.07.
What?
Gerald Ramdeen, $32,858,901.67. I'll skip the others. And what I want to say is this. It is absolutely clear that there was a calculated plot by the last government to totally rape the treasury of Trinidad and Tobago. Proved by the expenditure of $1.4 billion in legal fees by the last government. And I want to let you know this, Madam Speaker, in the minute and a half that I have. This matter is a breach of the Legal Profession Act, the mandatory provisions which say that an attorney at law cannot secret from his own client or sequester information, that an attorney at law has an obligation to put all material before the court, and a breach of Part B of the Legal Profession Act shall constitute professional misconduct. And it is absolutely clear from a comparison on the court fly sheet against the matters that this is a matter which must deserve the attention of the disciplinary committee, and that's where it is going. Because we have put the material together, and those who have abused the public office, including Anand Ramlogan and whoever else participated in making unlawful decisions in Trinidad and Tobago, they will have their turn to give their answers. You see, Madam Speaker, that won't be in the Parliament. That will be on the outside in Trinidad and Tobago. Because I will end now with how I came into the chamber.
Oh, sit up. Oh, be quiet.
Relevance?
Members, please. I overrule. Continue.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, the rationale behind this debate is distractionary. All that Oropouche East could do is to dig into the past. He will find no culpability. I was not Attorney General in 2004, 2005, 2006. I was Attorney General now. What they didn't cater for is that I would not fire a single soul. They hoped that I would have.
Honourable Member, your time has expired. Members, Honourable Member for Siparia.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I listened, like everyone else here, to our colleague from San Fernando West. And I'm sorry I sent for the book that was read by Oropouche East. Because Madam Speaker, the words within quoted by the member for Oropouche East.
Members, please control the crosstalk and let's proceed in a particular kind of manner that has respect for each other. Member for Siparia.
Thank you, Madam. And having listened to him for 45 minutes, the Honourable Member, for 45 minutes, I am convinced that this is a totally apt description of exactly what happened in the 45 minutes. You say, who the cap fits? Let him wear it. So, I invented a verb in the House, to succanarize. To succanarize was to do what only the gentleman could do. Talk on every subject with an air of authority. Talk for as long as possible, and so on. I will not repeat it. It's on the Hansard. Because you see, Madam Speaker, a case is being made out in this motion, through the motion, and in this debate. A case has been made out by the Honourable Member Oropouche East. And instead of answering that case, the Honourable Member for San Fernando West spent the 45 minutes doing exactly what he's accusing us, distractionary. And that's what he did. Because he went back to way back when, for what he knew, who knew, when they knew, how they knew. And all the things, ex post facto, after he made his decision, he now wants to rely upon. When he made the decision on his own admission, he had none of those things before him. None of those things he spent 45 minutes on this timeline regaling this House with. He had none of that information on his own admission. But today, the question for us and for the country is this. And my learned colleague is always using one of his favorite words about proportionality. But if there's executive action, it must be proportionate action. It could be for legislation or could be executive action. And the question is this, whether the means has a legitimate objective. That's the first question. The famous, the locus classicus in that is the De Freitas case coming out of Belize into the United Kingdom Privy Council. Is there a legitimate objective? And for the life of me, I have read every single report on this matter. I have listened to the Honourable Attorney General, and I cannot find any legitimate objective. Rantings and ravings and all the reasonings being given, there is just one little line at the bottom of a press release put out by the Attorney General on the 3rd of March of this year. And in that, the Honourable Attorney General speaks to, he says, the Attorney General, in his management of this matter, acted, and in effect, this is what he said, acted with responsibility, care, and due regard for, guess what? Judicial time and wasted costs. That was the objective for discontinuing this case, guillotining this case, withdrawing this case. Judicial time. That's his rationale, you know. Judicial time and wasted costs. Judicial time. But what about, Honourable Attorney General, for you? Do you fully understand and appreciate the role of an Attorney General in a constitutional democracy? The executive functions that are given to an Attorney General are very important because Section 75, I believe, and 76 sets out for us. There shall be a cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago. That cabinet shall comprise whom? The Prime Minister and such other members, but one of whom must be the Attorney General. Must be.
The Attorney General.
Not the other ministers, none of you, or all of you could be absent. But to comprise the cabinet, to run the business of Trinidad and Tobago, you must have an Attorney General. And it goes on in that same constitution, a little lower down, to talk about the Attorney General will have direction and control of the legal affairs of Trinidad and Tobago. And in a constitutional democracy, his role is here. He has a dual role. And that dual role is one which says that he is the legal advisor to the cabinet. He's a legal advisor to the government, the chief legal officer. One role. And in the other, he is the guardian of the public interest. Legal advisor, guardian of the public interest. And then he comes to wash his hand today, like Pontius Pilate, to say, you know, it's Petrotrin. Is the board and is the law and the Companies Act all irrelevant at this point in time. All irrelevant. Because when you took the decision, none of that was playing in your mind. None of that caused you to make that decision that you did, to guillotine this case, to truncate the case, to abandon, in effect, the public interest of which you were supposed to be the guardian. That is your role. And therefore, when you say you wash your hands, it wasn't me. You want to come in defense here. You want to be a shaggy and say, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. And such a defense is puerile, Honorable Madam Speaker. It is a pathetic attempt to shirk his responsibility and his duty as guardian. And therefore, if Petrotrin was a hand that signed it, the young lawyer, or the lawyer, young or otherwise, on the last day, on that final day of the 29th, when the case was discontinued, took pen to paper. His fingerprints, the AG's fingerprints are all over that document. All over. And you know, you cannot blow hot and you cannot blow cold at the same time. When we listened to him today, on the one hand he said, wasn't me, Shaggy all over again. But on the other hand, he said, I. And I called them in, and I asked them for this, and I. Ad infinitum. I. Did you hear him?
Yes.
I. And they came to the All Council meeting, yeah, and I said, I want this, and I want that, and I want the other.
And I alone.
And then he talks about what Ramlonga did and didn't do, and who did and didn't do. You know, guys, you tell us and we know. From September 7th, who is in charge? You have. In a few days, you will have served 10 months in office. You came yourself and you told us again today, you're going to review. You said you would review everything. So what did you do, sir? Between September 7th, 8th, or 9th, and when you came to discontinue this case, which cases did you review? That you could come here today and go to the newspaper and the press and the press conferences and say, look, you know, the first time I see this thing is today. The first time I get this is today, you know. And imagine an Attorney General admitting something like that. What a dereliction of duty. September 9th, you the AG, big bad and bright new. I should say new. I almost said something else. But brand, as Oropouche, he said, you know, newly minted Attorney General and so on.
You know.
I'm going to review every single thing. But wait, how much months later? Seen it for the first time. Seen it for the first time. Not good enough, Honorable Attorney General. You know, I think our friend, member for Oropouche, talked to us about maybe the Attorney General should recuse himself and let his number 2 lawyer in the AG's ministry take over Port-of-Spain North. But I wonder who in this country, apart from him, and maybe a few, the Attorney General and the second Attorney General in the ministry, I wonder if anybody else knows that when you pick up this court document, here's the pleading, yeah, you pick this up and you see the defense file on behalf of Malcolm Jones. In the same case, you know, madam, in this very same case. And you know, I have not heard in all the hullabaloo and all the noise that the member of Port-of-Spain North disclosed that he was one of the lawyers on record. And you know, they will tell us I'm lying. I'm not speaking. Look, here is the defense filed in court October 11, 2013. And there it is. There it is, one of the lawyers on record, madam. This is the court file. Stuart R. Young, the Honourable Minister.
1998-007.
October 11, 2013. I do not impugn his integrity, madam. But you see, I will come back to that. I will come back to those cases. I just have until we come back. You know, to show what these things mean in the holistic thing, to the ordinary observer. You know, in the law, madam, you're a lawyer yourself. They talk about the fair-minded observer. The man out on the maxi taxi going between Port-of-Spain and Diego Martin, going to Aberima, wherever, Barataria. What does that person think? And you know, in our jurisprudence and in our constitution, which enshrines the rule of law, you know the maxim, madam. And the maxim is, clearly, justice must not only be done, but must manifestly seem to be done. And when these things come into play, does that man on that maxi taxi going to Siparia, or the man going to Diego Martin, or going to Barataria, wherever it may be, or the man driving his little car, seeing trouble now to pay for gas and so on, given the price increases, what does he think when you see and hear these things? That justice must be done, but it must also be manifestly seen to be done. And I'll come back to that as we move. It doesn't end there, you know. On April 17, the Honorable Attorney General spoke about the application for disclosure and so on. And you know, that was the application that was before the court when they rushed to go discontinue the case. The application filed by whom? Mr. Malcolm Jones. And again, April 17, 2015, Stuart, sir, you will have your opportunity to speak, okay? I'm sure the speaker will allow you to speak. You will have your turn.
Thank you.
And so I am not impugning your integrity, sir. I am pointing out that the Honourable Minister is on record April 17, 2015. So the suggestion by Oropouche East could not have worked, that the Honourable Attorney General remove himself and the minister, the junior minister, could have overseen what is taking place in this case. So we put rest to that. Let us then look, Madam Speaker. You know, there was a case in the United Kingdom on the issue of what is called bias, apparent bias, conflict of interest in our law. The Integrity Commission codifies in statute conflict of law and so on. Our Constitution speaks about it in our Section 4 Bill of Rights, that you must have, decision makers must be fair and impartial and so on. And in making his decision, public officials at Fernando West to make a decision. And there was this case, Madam Speaker, in the United Kingdom, where a person who belonged to the household, the Queen's household, the royal household, determined that she could be the coroner to inquire into the death of Princess Diana. Yes? And the court took the view, no, you could not do that, because belonging to the Queen's household, that there is the likelihood, or there is the concern, that the fair-minded observer, the same person on the bus, on the maxi and so on, would believe that you were part of the royal family, and therefore you could not do it. You know, and Madam Speaker, that case, as it sounds, we have seen, I'll give it to you in a moment. In that case, and I'll give you citation, I don't want to spend time with a few minutes, I'll give it to you. Through you, Madam Speaker, it would be provided. That case and others like it point us to the whole question of the appearance of bias. And here it is, can anyone here deny that Mr. Malcolm Jones has all the appearance of being part of the PNM royal family?
Yeah.
Who walked with kings and principalities from way back when and is now one more coming back on stage. You know, Shakespeare once said, you know, yes, when you don't want to listen, you get angry. When Shakespeare said in the famous play As You Like It, when he said, all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and they have their entrances. Post-20 general election 2015, there was the exit of the partnership and there was the entrance of the PNM. Yes? And in that we saw the entrance of some new kids on the block, of which the AG is one. And we saw the return, the re-entrance of other players. And in the kahani, as we use the word, in the kahani of the entry and the unfolding of that kahani with respect to the Honorable Attorney General is intertwined and intermingled the chronicle of the 4 J's. Those who walked with kings and principalities, who influenced all these decisions with the World GTL, and there are 4 or 5 other projects, which has cost this country up to today that we are paying through our noses. The GOP, the headquarters, the gas optimization, the headquarters, and so on. these 4 Js enter post-election 2015, resurrected. And the first to hit the scene, or hit the stage, we saw within 1 month of the general election. Enter? No.
Julie?
No. The first one was Mr. Jupiter.
Jupiter.
The first one was Mr. Jupiter installed in Petrotrin. And then, just about, he was the first one, within the month. Coming to the end of the month, again within a month, in October, 7th or 8th of October, whom do we see? Enter the other two, Mr. Ken Julian and Mr. Malcolm Jones. Enter both on the cabinet-appointed Committee on Energy. And then in the spin-off, I looked at Battlestar Galactica, and I could watch that 15 times. I really enjoyed it, madam. The wonders of the universe, all to behold. And people enjoyed that so much from so way back when. What did they do? They made a sequel, a spin-off. They made 3 or 5 or 4 spin-offs, and we see it with other, the return of the superheroes of the Marvel comics and so on. You do these spin-offs. And only yesterday or the day before, what are we reading in the newspaper? We are reading that World GTL, the scrap heap, has been sold to a new company, Nikon. And enter the 4th J, John Andrews. John Andrews, who worked with the former Prime Minister. Enter well, you don't know him, but I'm sure there are others who do. Enter, he is a director of Nikon. And let's not fool ourselves. Of course, it was sold for a song and dance, but we'll get back to it. What we are giving away there is those kinds of deals we've seen over the years that are things that are so offensive and which is so repugnant to preserving the birthright and the patrimony of Trinidad and Tobago for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So what it is a 20-year take or pay. Remember that famous take or pay? You remember BW and they say, use it or lose it? Do you remember that? Take or pay, the heat slots, take or pay, teach you down the road. You have the other 20, when you take it up, the other 21 years where you have to supply this gas at certain prices. So it's like a sweetheart deal that comes with the scrap heap that is the World GTL project down there, Madam Speaker. And so enter these characters again on the world stage. And we want to ask in all of this, through you, to the Honorable Attorney General, when it is that the decision had to be made, and I've already said the Honorable Attorney General's fingerprints through his own admission are all over. Admission is all over. So to say that it wasn't you and so on is not a sustainable defense. When you had to make that decision then, what was the legitimate objective as a member of the executive, as a public officer, making a decision? What was the legitimate objective? I come back, in his own words, wasted costs, and what was the other one? Judicial time. The trial days were fixed for how many days? 4 days. About 3 or 4, for the most 5 days of trial, fixed, yeah? So that's the judicial time this Attorney General is worrying about. He don't want to waste 4 days of judicial time. So you know what? Let's discontinue this case. And he doesn't want to get wasted costs, but good Lord, you're talking about $1 billion or more claim, man. Wasted costs, how much we have to now pay Mr. Malcolm Jones? And of course, I'm sure the member for Port of Spain North as junior counsel in the matter will get a bit of the $3 million that is paid in costs. You know, and I want to ask the Honorable Attorney General and the Honorable Member, as at the date of the making of that decision, whether the Honorable Member Port of Spain North remain on the record for Malcolm Jones. Perhaps he did discontinue. He may have done so. We ask him to answer. And so, Madam, the Honorable Attorney General had his 45 minutes. And this is exactly what Mr. Winston Mahabe was talking about in his book. You could not answer the issues raised, so what did you do instead? No defense. So what did you do instead? You came here You came here with, I'll tell you, I'm sure you know, Honorable Attorney General is distracting us unnecessarily.
Member for Siparia.
You don't want to hear us. You just want to get us upset.
Just direct your address to the chair and...
So what did the Honorable Attorney General do then? He came with what they call ad hominem attacks, attacking people personally and so on, attacking the messengers, as they say. He came with ex post facto arguments, long after the fact, things that did not obtain when the decision was being taken. He came with red herrings, distracting us, the same static he's speaking of, distraction and distractionary, took us down with distractions. The Honorable Attorney General came with irrelevancies, and that was his defense. I have not heard, with due respect, any answer to the claims that the Honorable Attorney General operated in a manner such as to compromise this office. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, we believe that the conduct of the Attorney General in all of the circumstances of this case was conduct such as to compromise his office. We believe it was contrary to his constitutional remit. We believe it was in breach of his oath of office, and when we come back after the break, I will deal with these. We believe there was an unconstitutional trespass against the jurisdictional preserve of the judiciary, violating the very foundation stone of our constitutional democracy. What is that? The rule of law and the separation of powers. And that was done without just cause, and coming back to the whole issue of proportionality. We also believe that this decision is redolent of bias and conflict of interest, that it reeks of political interference. But Madam Speaker, there's one thing before you take us away. This debate today is shrouded in mystery and secrecy. Today I am witnessing that the Honorable Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago has dishonored and broken his word given to this Parliament on the 18th of March 2016. On that day, I had asked the Honorable Prime Minister if he would give an undertaking to provide the House of Representatives with all documents and legal advice concerning the discontinuance of the case involving Malcolm Jones for purposes of transparency and accountability. The Honorable Prime Minister, in reply on that said day, stated that he understood that the opposition leader had indicated an intention to file a motion in this House, and that such motion, in such motion, any and all information concerning the matter would be made available to the House. The motion was filed since when? Well, it came onto the order paper a while now. No response. Set down to today for debate. And Madam Speaker, I know there is a committee, a new committee in the Parliament for government assurances, and I would want to refer this matter there, but I am very disappointed that the Honourable Prime Minister having given his word, not to me, he gave it to the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, and he has failed to honour his words with respect to providing the documents and the legal advice. Could not have been before the debate. He used the words in the debate when the motion was filed. Hansard of 18 February, the motion of, this motion, Madam, if you, I'm sorry, through you, Madam, yes, I will. On March 18th, Friday, March. Sure.
Not be distracted and continue. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, it's okay, Madam. I thank you very much. Yes. On the 18th of March 2016, the Honourable Prime Minister indicated that it will be provided in this motion. And thus far, motion has been filed. And for true transparency and accountability, surely, that those matters should be brought to the House prior to the debate so that you could peruse the documents. That was the purpose of asking. And the Honourable Attorney General told us, when I asked him, he told us, well, I've given it to the Law Association. And then I said, would you make it available to the Integrity Commission? The Honourable Attorney General said, no, they didn't ask for it. Today, I want him to bring evidence that the Law Association did, in fact, ask him. Honorable Attorney General, does he understand his constitutional remit? Does he understand the statutory remit of the Law Association? The Law Association has no jurisdiction, no power, no role or function to take all these court papers to do what? To go on radio and TV and say, hey, we support the AG for discontinuing.
Again, brief.
Do we take it now and assess who is right and who is wrong, who we do in this case, who will lose this case? They have no statutory remit. The place that belonged was in the court, in the Supreme Court of Trinidad and Tobago. And for the Honorable Attorney General to come here today to take us back about the evidence and how much evidence, it's not for us to judge the case.
Plain judge.
It was not for him to be judge and jury in that case.
Honorable Member.
It was for the Supreme Court of Trinidad and Tobago.
It is now 4:30. Honorable Member for Siparia, you have 3 minutes and 50 seconds left of your original 30 minutes. We'll take the suspension now and we'll resume at 5 o'clock.